Last month, Russia's only launch pad capable of supporting ISS missions suffered critical damage. Boeing's Starliner just had its contract slashed from 6 missions down to 4 after stranding astronauts in orbit. Dream Chaser's 7 planned flights? Now reduced to a single test mission. So what happens when nearly every spacecraft supporting the ISS hits a wall at the same time? NASA just made a massive decision. They're ordering SpaceX to dramatically increase Dragon cargo launches, 3 missions in 2026 alone. Why is Dragon suddenly the only option left? Let's dive right in. Let's start with what actually happened to Russia. Their launch pad 31 took serious damage following the MS-28 launch last month. Now here's the problem. Russia has other launch pads, sure, but Pad 31 is the only one equipped to launch both Soyuz crew vehicles and Progress cargo spacecraft to the ISS. Without it, Russia's entire ISS support system just stopped. How long until they can fix it? 4 months minimum, possibly longer. But it gets worse. The launch pad was built using Soviet-era technology from the previous century. That means repairs can't just be rushed through. They need to follow extremely strict restoration requirements using outdated specifications. Winter is approaching, which only adds more delays. Even after physical repairs finish, the pad still needs extensive inspection and validation before it can safely support another launch. The Progress MS-33 cargo mission that was scheduled for December 20th, postponed indefinitely. The next one planned for March could easily slip too. This is the first time in roughly 60 years that Russia has faced this level of disruption to its orbital launch capabilities. Think about that for a moment. During the entire space shuttle retirement period, when America couldn't send its own astronauts up, Russia never missed a beat. Now they're completely grounded. So that brings us to the American side. Surely NASA has backup options, right? Well, let's look at what's actually available beyond Dragon. Boeing's Starliner received over $4 billion in NASA funding under the same commercial crew contract as Dragon. Same program, same goals, completely different results. Starliner's most successful mission happened back in 2022, and even that flight didn't fully restore confidence. Then came the crewed mission, the one that was supposed to prove Starliner could safely transport astronauts. Instead, technical malfunctions left those astronauts stranded aboard the ISS longer than planned. NASA had no choice but to call SpaceX and ask their direct competitor to bring those astronauts home. How do you recover from that kind of failure? You don't, apparently. NASA just revised Boeing's contract from 6 operational missions down to 4. The next mission is expected to carry crew, but any flights after that depend entirely on whether that mission succeeds. Translation: NASA doesn't trust Starliner anymore. They're giving Boeing one more chance to prove the vehicle works, and if it doesn't, the program is essentially finished. Then there's Sierra Space's Dream Chaser. This vehicle hasn't even flown to orbit yet, but NASA already lost patience with the delays. The original agreement called for 7 ISS resupply flights. Now, Dream Chaser gets 1 demonstration mission toward the end of next year. Just 1. Any future missions depend on how that test flight goes and whether NASA feels like approving more. That's not a vote of confidence. That's NASA keeping the door barely open while preparing to walk away. Northrop Grumman's Cygnus spacecraft hasn't escaped problems either. The NG-22 mission was lost during transportation earlier this year, raising serious questions about reliability. Cygnus returned to flight with NG-23 in September, but the damage to its reputation was already done. It'll continue supporting ISS resupply, though with a much more limited and uncertain role going forward. Now step back and look at the full picture. Russia can't launch. Starliner failed its crewed mission. Dream Chaser can't get off the ground. Cygnus lost a vehicle. What's left? 1 spacecraft. Dragon is now the only vehicle NASA can actually rely on to consistently reach the ISS and return safely. Not just for cargo, for crew too. Every other option has either failed, delayed, or proven unreliable. How did we end up in a situation where a single spacecraft from one company holds this much responsibility? Here's where it gets really interesting. NASA is already preparing to modify Dragon's cargo launch schedule by increasing mission frequency. Two upcoming missions, CRS-34 and CRS-35, were originally planned for June and November 2026. Under the new plan, they're moving forward to May and August 2026, only 3 months apart. A third mission, CRS-36, could fly later that same year. That's 3 Dragon cargo missions in a single year, compared to the previous slower cadence. NASA isn't just asking SpaceX to maintain current operations, they're asking for significantly more. And there's another possibility on the table. If Russia can't restore launchpad 31 within the next 6 months, Dragon might need to support an all-Russian cosmonaut mission to replace MS-28. Russia will do everything possible to avoid this scenario because it means paying SpaceX for a service they desperately want to provide themselves. But if the launchpad repairs drag on, they won't have a choice. Dragon becomes the only option for getting their cosmonauts home and sending replacements up. Let's talk about cost, because this is where things get absolutely wild. Elon Musk publicly responded to a comparison of seat prices across different spacecraft recently. A seat aboard Dragon costs approximately $55 million. Soyuz, $80 million per seat. Starliner, even higher. Legacy crew vehicles developed decades ago can cost up to $390 million per seat. Dragon isn't just more reliable, it's dramatically cheaper. NASA is getting better performance at a fraction of the cost compared to every alternative. For an agency constantly fighting budget constraints, that's not just an advantage, it's a lifeline. This situation represents something bigger than just increased launch frequency. SpaceX is effectively stepping in to stabilize the entire ISS operation during a multi-vehicle crisis that nobody predicted would happen simultaneously. This strengthens SpaceX's position for future contracts in ways that are hard to overstate. When NASA plans future missions, whether to lunar orbit, Mars, or new commercial space stations, they'll remember who kept the ISS running when everything else fell apart. Trust is currency in aerospace, and SpaceX just made a massive deposit. As Musk stated last year, the world does not need another capsule. What matters is fully reusable rockets and spacecraft. That comment makes even more sense now. While competitors struggle with capsules that fly once or twice before retirement, Dragon has proven it can fly multiple missions, land safely, be refurbished, and launch again. That's the fundamental difference. NASA isn't just buying launches, they're buying a flight-proven system with a track record nobody else can match. Now here's the question nobody's asking yet. What happens next year when NASA needs to purchase additional Dragon missions beyond what's already contracted? They've done this before. After completing the original 6-mission commercial crew contract, NASA bought 8 more Dragon flights. If other spacecraft continue showing no meaningful improvement, that number could grow substantially. Russia faces the same calculus. If launchpad 31 isn't restored before the next required crew rotation, they'll need to purchase Dragon missions too. SpaceX isn't just winning contracts, they're becoming the default option by process of elimination. But Dragon's role could extend even further into a domain that hasn't received much attention yet. Emergency rescue operations in space. When spacecraft encounter major problems in orbit, options become extremely limited. Everything turns reactive rather than proactive. China's Shenzhou 20 recently collided with space debris, forcing authorities to prepare a replacement spacecraft on short notice. But not every country maintains backup vehicles ready to launch. In scenarios requiring rapid response, few spacecraft match Dragon's combination of reliability, operational flexibility, and quick turnaround capability. Establishing a dedicated space rescue system would require new contracts, potentially led by NASA or an international coalition. SpaceX would likely receive additional funding to maintain Dragon spacecraft specifically for emergency response missions. That's not just another revenue stream, it's another layer of indispensability. Looking beyond the ISS era, Dragon's future remains wide open. As the station approaches retirement, Dragon is slated to perform the controlled deorbit mission, literally bringing down humanity's greatest engineering achievement in low Earth orbit. After that, the next generation of private space stations will need reliable transportation. Projects from VAST, Axiom Space, Orbital Reef, and Starlab are already in development. Most of these concepts rely heavily on SpaceX infrastructure and Dragon operations. Even if some projects eventually develop their own vehicles, Dragon will provide essential support during their early operational phases. The pattern is unmistakable. Dragon now outpaces every active competitor in both capability and reliability. At a time when alternative vehicles face persistent setbacks, Dragon is positioned to sustain the ISS through higher flight rates and uninterrupted service. It has effectively become the only consistently dependable human-rated spacecraft in operation. Not the best option, the only option. That's a position of dominance that hasn't existed in spaceflight since the Space Shuttle era, and even then NASA had international partners with proven vehicles. Today, it's Dragon or it's nothing. So here's where we stand. Dragon isn't just supporting the ISS anymore. It's holding the entire low Earth orbit infrastructure together while every other spacecraft struggles to keep up. Russia can't launch. Boeing's Starliner failed when it mattered most. Dream Chaser keeps delaying. Cygnus lost credibility. Dragon is the last spacecraft standing, and NASA knows it. That's why they're accelerating the launch schedule. That's why they're preparing to purchase additional missions. That's why Russia might have no choice but to pay SpaceX to bring their own cosmonauts home. This moment represents something we haven't seen in spaceflight history. One company, one vehicle, holding this level of responsibility for human presence in space. Some might call that concerning. Others see it as the natural result of building the most reliable spacecraft ever created. Either way, the reality is undeniable. Dragon has become indispensable. The question now isn't whether Dragon will continue dominating ISS operations. It's what happens when private space stations come online, when lunar missions ramp up, when emergency rescue systems need to be established. Dragon proved it can handle the pressure when everything else fails. That's a reputation worth more than any contract. What do you think? Does SpaceX Dragon now hold one of the most important positions among spacecraft in history? Drop a dragon emoji in the comments if you agree. And if you want to keep following the developments that are reshaping space exploration right now, hit that subscribe button for Space Update 24 hours. We're tracking every move SpaceX makes, every contract NASA signs, and every shift in the new space race. Don't miss what's coming next.